It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Once again, thank you very much for joining the call today. I welcome all of you once again to Bhakti Sangha conference call. Let us move to our next session, which is Srimad Bhagavatam class. May I know who all have joined the call this morning?
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Narada Mataji, Indadvat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai, Priti Dasi from Charlotte. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Preeti Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Nirmala Mataji. This is Kamadeki Dasi from Baltimore. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. And
Hare Krishna, Kaumadiki Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. This is Arvind Das from Chicago. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Arvindaksha Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Narada Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, and to all the assembled devotees here. This is Megha from Naperville. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Megha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Narmada Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharajas, and all glories to the assembled devotees. This is Tiffany in Pennsylvania. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Narmada Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vinita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled devotees on the call, all glories to Guru Maharaj. This is Anita from Sharjah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Anita Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to the assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. All glories to assembled devotees. This is Mohini Lakshmi from Detroit.
Hare Krishna, Mohini Lakshmi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. This is Sushmita from Canada.
Hare Krishna, Sushmita Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Narmada Mataji, Dandavat Pranam to you and all Vaishnava, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev ki Jai, Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Gopika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. This is Radha from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Radha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nanda Priya Narmada Mataji, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Mataji. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devidas.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to the assembled devotees. This is Aditi Devi Dasi from Canada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Aditi Mataji, Dandavad Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. So nice to see you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Narmada Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Indulekha Karuna Devi Dasi from Lincoln.
Hare Krishna, Indulekha Karuna Mataji, Dandavad Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna. Mataji, shall we start recording, Mataji? There are 4 slokas.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hare Krishna, welcome to Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Keshavanand Prabhu on the call to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto 20th chapter 14th to 17th slokas onwards. Before handing over the call to Prabhuji, I would like to ask Aditi Mataji to please take over the call and to give a brief introduction about Prabhuji. Mataji, please take over the call.
Hare Krishna. This is a brief introduction for His Grace Keshavanand Prabhu. He was born, he was a professional doctor prior to becoming a full-time practicing monk. For the past 20 years, he has conducted extensive research and authored books in the field of science and spirituality. He feels the rift between science and spirituality must disappear to bring peace in the world. Keshavanand Prabhu has studied both Vedic and Western philosophy. Besides learning Sanskrit, he also learned Bengali, Gujarati, Marathi, and Kannada to know about other traditions. His persistent endeavor in the field of science and spirituality has enabled him to come up with seminars of diverse topics like science and Vedas, mind and machines, science fails to explain life, consciousness and beyond, etc., that he has presented in various colleges in India, Europe, and America under the guidance of his spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami. He has also started a Gurukul, a traditional system of Vedic education in Punjab, India, where children learn the ancient Vedic culture and values. He has also started a farm community that follows a traditional way of living with mud huts and thatched roofs and cows and, of course, farming. The communities will set a model for the world to show how to live a life based on the principle of simple living, high thinking. Over to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for the introduction. Indu Mataji, if you are available, can you please start reading the slokas, Mataji?
Jai Mataji.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay. Hare Krishna. We'll start reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 20, text 14 through 17. Tadvipapati praivrato rajan hiranyareta namaswam dvipam shaptabhya swaputrebhyo yatha bhagam vibhajya swayam tapa atishta vasudana dridharuchi nabhigupta stutyavrata vivikta vamadeva namabhyam. Translation: O king, another son of Maharaja Priyavrata, Hiranyareta, was the king of this island. He divided it into 7 parts, which he delivered to his 7 sons according to the rights of inheritance. The king then retired from family life to engage in austerities. The names of those sons are Vasu, Vasudana, Dridharachi, Stutyavrata, Nabhigupta, Vivikta, and Vamadeva. Text 15. Tesham varsheshu simi girayo nadyas chabhignata sapta
Taiva Chakras Chatushringa Kapilas Chitrakuto Devanika Urdhvaroma Dravina Iti Rasakulya Madhukulya Mitravinda Shrutavinda Devagarbha Gritachyuta Mantramaleti. Translation: in those 7 islands, there are 7 boundary mountains known as Chakra, Chatushringa, Kapila, Chitrakuta, Devanika, Urdhvaroma, and Dravina. There are also 7 rivers known as Ramakulya, Madhukulya, Mitravinda, Shrutavinda, Devagarpa, Ghritachuta, and Mantramala. Text 16. Yasham payobhi kushadvipa kasha kushala kovidabhiyukta kulaka samgnya bhagavantam jataveda sarupinam karma kaushalena yajante. Translation: the inhabitants of the islands of Kushadvipa are celebrated as the Kushalas, Kovidas, Abhiyuktas, and Kulakas. They are like the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras respectively. By bathing in the waters of those rivers, they all become purified. They are experts in performing ritualistic ceremonies according to the orders of the Vedic scriptures. Thus, they worship the Lord in his aspect as the demigod of fire. Text 17. Parasya brahmana sakshad jata vedosi havya yat devanam purushan naghanam yajnena purusham yajeti. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is the mantra by which the inhabitants of Kushadvipa worship the fire god. O fire god, you are a part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, and you carry to him all the offerings of sacrifices. Therefore, we request you to offer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead the yagnic ingredients we are offering the demigods, for the Lord is the real enjoyer. Purport: the demigods are servants who assist the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one worships the demigods, as servants of the Supreme, carry the sacrificial offering to the Lord. Like tax collectors collecting revenue from the citizens and bringing it to the government's treasury, the demigods cannot accept the sacrificial offerings. They simply carry the offering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado. Since the Guru is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he carries to the Lord whatever is offered to him. Similarly, all the demigods, as faithful servants of the Supreme Lord, hand over to the Supreme Lord whatever is offered to them in the sacrificial performances. There is no fault in worshipping the demigods with this understanding. But to think that the demigods are independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and equal to him is called Hritagnyana, a loss of intelligence. Kamais taister Hritagnyana. One who thinks that the demigods themselves are the actual benefactors is mistaken. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Mataji, Prabhuji is also on the call. So.
Yes, Mataji. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranams. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for giving your very valuable time and association to us this morning and enlightening us on Srimad Bhagavatam. Whenever you're ready, please take over the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Somebody is unmuted behind. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharne Nirvishesh Nevadi Paschatishta. So we are discussing 5th canto, also 20th chapter, 14, 15, 16, 17 verses as we read. Okay, so in the there are few things in the previous verses, not exactly much, but in the 14th verse, one of the sons of Maharaj Priyavrata, Hiranyareta, he delivered that island to his 7 sons, and then he went. Then the king retired from family life to engage in austerities. Now this is important. Other things are information, and we can always look back into the names of suns and the names of rivers. But the important point here is the king himself, he went for tapasya and he retired from family life, and that was a system in previous days. Lord Rishabdev, we know from Bhagavatam, he had 100 sons, and he enthroned his eldest son Bharat, King Bharat, on the throne, and he himself retired from family life. Lord Ram actually, Lord Ram, he binded up his pastings, he went back to his abode. Pandavas, they retired from family life, and they installed Parikshit Maharaj as a king. So we know all great kings in previous days, and even other Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, they were retiring from family life to take sannyas, and that's it. And then they perfected their life like that. So, this is called tapasya. In this verse, it is called the engage in austerities. Now, why you have to retire from family life? This is a very unique concept, because in modern society, we don't have this concept of leaving the family. Of course, austerities in Krishna consciousness, when you talk of austerities in Krishna consciousness, now you might think, what's the need of doing all these things in Krishna conscious life? Now, by the way, this Priyavrata Maharaj, he himself was a great king and a great devotee. His sons, Hiranyaret, he was also a great devotee, as we know from Srimad Bhagavatam. Probably the 7 sons of Hiranyareta, they are also pure devotees of Lord. They are also great devotees. We know that these verses 15, 16 talking that these sons and the people of this place, they were bathing in the 7 rivers, and they made themselves pure, and then they worshipped fire with the following the mantra. So it seems that they were devotees, they were following Vedic system. Now, is this kind of system required in Krishna consciousness? Because Krishna consciousness means chanting Hare Krishna, and Griye Thako, Bane Thako, Sada Hari Bole Thako. Wherever you are, either in house or in forest, always speak about Krishna. So do we have to leave our families? Well, the whole point is, although Krishna consciousness is not dependent on leaving your family or staying in your family, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Griye Thako, Bane Thako. But at the same time, Krishna consciousness is dependent on a favorable atmosphere to practice devotion. That's very important. And in general, household life is not favorable for practicing Krishna consciousness, especially in old age. In old age, when you're surrounded by your sons and grandsons and son's wife, and there are so many things around in the house, in general, it's very unconducive to spiritual life. There's a tendency to get trapped in comforts of the house and fall into false security. So that's why all scriptures advise, even great kings, great kings, they would have absolutely no problem if they would have stayed in the kingdom. They would do whatever they could do whatever they want. They could have handed over all their management to their sons, and they could have stayed somewhere in the park, in the garden of the palace, and do their practices. Nobody would disturb them, but that's not the point. The point is to leave your home, because out of sight, out of mind. That's also the rule. So Srila Prabhupada said, even in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said, 50% of work is left. That is Varnashrama system, to establish Varnashrama. Prabhupada is talking in his books again about Varnashrama. What is Varnashrama? This is a part of Varnashrama. After household life, after 50 years, you leave your home. You go to some dham. Maybe you don't enter the forest, but you do go to some dham. And stay away from your sons and grandsons and house, family and comforts. Do little austerities and focus on Krishna. That's required. Leave your household affairs. Leave the household worries and focus on Krishna. That is what Vedic system advises. It's a very good system. And many people do like that. And many people I've seen, there are some of my friends from Seattle. They shifted to Mayapur. I mean to say most of them, few of them are doing job in Seattle and somewhere in New York. They left their jobs and they shifted to Mayapur. They kept some savings and they have a plan. Now, I mean to say they just quit the jobs, that's all. The children are studying in Gurukul in Mayapur and now they have a plan to actually settle down there and focus on Krishna consciousness. The idea of leaving home is to focus on Krishna consciousness and give yourself more time from household engagements. And that you will not be able to do in your own house if you stay there. Because in a house, there are eternal engagements. You cannot remain free. You cannot stay just without doing anything. It's not possible. Something or the other comes up, pops up. And then there are attachments to our kith and kins. So that has to be broken somehow. So even Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in the last part of his life, he was living alone in Calcutta. He made Bhakti Bhavan. Even in Navadip, he made Swananda Suddha Kunj, separate bhajan kuti for himself. And he retired from his law as a judge, and he was staying alone and doing his bhajan. So we see from Vedic scriptures and we see from the life of saints that this kind of austerity is good in one sense after some age. But Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion, what is austerities in Krishna consciousness? He defines what is austerities. The real austerities, real definition of austerities, or in other words, whatever austerities are mentioned in scriptures like this, leaving the house after age of 50, going to sannyas or vanprasth, whatever. All this is designed to Satatam Smartyo Vishnu, Vismartyo na jatu chit. Always remember Krishna and never forget him. That is a real tapasya. Some devotees think that actually don't eat less, drink less, and fast. That might be good in some, on Ekadashis, on festivals, or sometimes it might be good. But regularly not eating and fasting, and people think this is tapasya, but this is, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, these all practices are a product of mind. Krishna never recommends this. Acharyas don't recommend all these things. To engage in sense gratification, in luxury, in gluttony, that's bad, but equally bad is to engage in extreme fasts and to destroy your body. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this body is mine. Yantra Rurani Mayaya. This is a machine in which soul is sitting and there is a super soul. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, those who torture their body by regular fasts, they are demoniac. We don't want to destroy. This body is a product of material nature, a property of Krishna, designed by Krishna, beautiful design, a complex machinery, given, awarded to us to serve Krishna. That's all. That's the purpose of this body. But body often pulls us down. It is said in scriptures, there are 3 obstacles in the path of devotion. There are many classifications, but this is one of the classifications. The 3 obstacles on the path of devotion. One is the word, the devil, and the flesh. That's said in Christian theology. The 3 obstacles: the word, the devil, and the flesh. The word is posing so many obstacles, so many adhyatmik, adi bhautik, adi devic klesha. And there is a devil who is trying to put obstacles for Maya. And then there's a flesh. A flesh pulls us down. This body is a product of mental delusion, just as the spiritual body is a product of love of God. Similarly, this body is a product of mental delusion, illusion, our own mental ideas. So this body forces us to engage in sense gratification. This flesh, as it is said, what comes from flesh is flesh. What comes from spirit is spirit. That's said in Bible. Flesh will pull you down, will pull you into sense gratification. That's flesh. So this body is made of flesh, and all the atoms of this body are full of sense gratification, and they pull us down. In fact, this body is a product of sin. Lord Rishabdev says in Bhagavatam, Lord Rishabdev says, first of all, we should not have taken this body. Because the fact that we have this body, we are sinful. This body is a product of sins. Why? Because this body is a product of our own desires. How can we say that? Because if we had only spiritual desires, desire to please Krishna, then we would not have this body. We would have been spiritual word in a spiritual form, but we are not in spiritual word. We don't have spiritual form. Rather, we have this body. From where this body has come, Krishna doesn't force anything on us. We want flesh. We want to fulfill our desires. Krishna says, okay, you can't fulfill your desires in spiritual body. Here is another material body made of flesh. So that's the third obstacle, flesh. But if we consider this body, now anyway, so because this body pulls us down, many people think, okay, mortify this body. Many people do austerities and they don't eat, don't sleep, and they fast. And they think if we make this body weak, the senses will become weak, and then we will be able to serve God nicely. Intention is good, but the method is bad, wrong, because Krishna says in Gita, what's that? Ras varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. What's the first line? I just forgot the first line. No, that's not Dhyayato Vishna Pumsa. The second line is Ras Varjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate. Yeah, right, yeah. Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehina Ras Varjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate. Krishna says, you can weaken your senses, you can weaken your body, fasting, and Prabhupada mentions the purport, but nevertheless, you will not lose the taste of sense gratification. And that's a great difference in Gaudiya Vaishnava outlook. Gaudiya Vaishnavas go right to the root of the problem. Root of the problem is not the body, the root is desires. Yogis and jnanis, they confuse that this flesh is bad, it must be abandoned and weakened. But no, according to Gaudiya Vaishnavas, flesh is not bad. Although flesh is a product of sin, and we are in this flesh, and body and soul is united as if, so just like butter in the milk, it's extremely difficult to separate body and soul, although they are different. But Krishna says that's not the process. Because no matter how much you weaken your senses and body, the desire will remain. And that desire will not allow you to serve Krishna nicely. It'll again strike back one day or the other, and you will fall down. So Krishna says, no, Krishna says, my idea is that you leave the desire, lower desires, lower taste, by experiencing a higher taste, ras prajam rasopiyasya, and then you will be able to leave all, you will be able to serve Krishna nicely. That is purification. That is called Krishna consciousness, experiencing higher taste in Krishna consciousness. So in Krishna consciousness, austerity is nothing to do with eating less or mortifying or weakening your senses. No, we don't do that. We don't do that. Because according to us, that might be a demoniac activity to torture and to actually destroy this body by being fast. And in fact, in Kali Yuga, it's also difficult to do. Many devotees who try to fast and do all these things, they eventually end up being sick. Our bodies are very weak. On the other hand, we want to make this body healthy. This is the devotional outlook. It's completely reverse of the outlook of yogis and jnanis. We want to make this body, keep this body healthy in the service of God. That is a path of love, by the way. The path of love is very different from the path of knowledge or path of yoga. And that is why it is said it is very difficult to understand the path of love. The path of love is like a snake. It doesn't walk straight. Path of jnanis and yogis, you can understand by rational and logic, and you can understand, okay, this is this, and you can walk straight. But path of love goes like a snake, like this and this and this. You cannot understand how path of love is moving. And on the path of love, the only austerity is sacrificing your desires and even yourself to Krishna. Sacrificing the attachment to this world, attachment to flesh, and attachment to your own desires. That is the path of love. Love demands a complete focus. And love demands, what's that? Love demands exclusive focus on the lover. Love is demanding. Because you see, a girlfriend and a boyfriend. A boyfriend starts loving some other girl. The girl whom he is already in love. She will feel cheated, and this word is going on. You cheat me. So Krishna feels cheated if we love anything else besides Krishna. And that's what in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says. Vyavsayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bhahu shakayanantascha buddhaya vyavsayikam. Krishna says, Vyavsayatmika buddhi. I want a focused intelligence on me. And that focus means love. There is no question of focus without love. You can focus out of concentration, but that's not focus, because concentration can be maintained while you're concentrating. But as soon as you leave your meditation, you lose your focus and concentration. But love is not like that. So that's what Krishna says. Krishna says, okay, austerities in Krishna consciousness is leaving your own selfish desires and only serving me. And that is how you can do that, by experiencing higher taste, by developing love of God. That's the idea there. Now, so you see the point. So there's a difference. Austerities in Krishna consciousness is something internal. And that is why you see Mahaprabhu's devotees. They were all doing feasting and they were dancing, and we don't find any devotee doing like not eating anything. Yeah, Raghunath Das Goswami was there. Raghunath Das Goswami, he was eating very little. Mahaprabhu told, bhal na khao, bhal na porebe, don't eat nice. And And at one point of time, he was just eating very little rice, which is thrown from the Jagannath Mandir, which got rotted. And Mahaprabhu was very happy with him. But on the other hand, Rupa Goswami is not doing like this. Advaitacharya is not doing like this. Sarup Damodar, Ramanand Rai, they are actually well put off, and they are not doing like this. Only Raghunath Das Goswami's case is that there. And Prabhupada explains, Raghunath Das Goswami is not artificially curtailing his food. In Vrindavan, when Raghunath Goswami went to Vrindavan, daily he was drinking 2 spoons of buttermilk, that's all. Now, is he doing artificially? No. For yogis and jnanis, they reduce eating. But for Raghunath Das Goswami, he forgot eating. And this is a big difference. He forgot eating. He forgot. He was too absorbed in trance of Krishna consciousness. He forgot to eat. Just like Vamshyas Babaji, Gauradas Babaji. These Babajis, we know they were Bhagavad Das Babaji, Madhusudan Das Babaji, Jagannath Das Babajis. They were also practicing Krishna consciousness, and they were chanting their rounds. And often they forgot eating for the entire day. They were simply absorbed in bliss of Krishna consciousness. That is okay. But on that, Krishna consciousness is not dependent. It's nothing to do with not eating. If you don't want to eat, okay, don't eat. Don't eat. What do we say? Bliss of or enjoyment of this material world. That we can do. That we can do. In fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, for yogis and jnanis, fasting means not eating. But for us, fasting means not giving enjoyment to our senses. You can fast by not eating, but there's another meaning. Eyes also eat, ears also eat. And the food for eyes is form, the food for ears is sound, the food for mouth is not food, but it's a taste of food. And in that sense, when you stop sense gratification, you aren't fast. So devotees, you might see elevated devotees eating. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's doing feasting. Raghav Pandit Jhali is there, and he's eating so much. Devotees are inviting him to his, Advaitacharya invites him to his house, and he prepares so many dishes, and Mahaprabhu is eating, and he wants to stop, but Advaitacharya is forcing him to eat. And along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there were also sannyasis staying in Jagannath Puri. Paramanand Puri was there. Brahmanand Bharti was there. These were all accompanying associates of Madhava Puri, and they came and joined Mahaprabhu. So when Mahaprabhu used to go in Jagannath Puri for lunch, people used to invite him. These sannyasis used to go with him, and they used to give them so much to eat, and they were eating. So were they doing sense gratification? No, they were not doing sense gratification. What they were doing is they were eating to please the devotees and to reciprocate the love, but in their heart they were not enjoying eating. They were not enjoying the taste of the food. That's what Jamrasopiyas say. So the conclusion is the austerities. What do we mean by austerities in Krishna consciousness? That can be at different levels. The first level is, of course, what is not austerities in Krishna consciousness is torturing your body, doing long fasts, and weakening your senses, and not giving them food and blah blah whatever. That is not Krishna consciousness. That is demoniac. What is austerities in Krishna consciousness? The first level is doing fasts on Ekadashis and festivals and appearance of Lord. And even those fasts, what we do at Ekadashis and festivals, that is just to save time and not fall into sleep by eating, and practice more Krishna consciousness. That's all. The next level of definition of austerities in Krishna consciousness is to actually always remember Krishna and never forget him. What Rupa Goswami says. That austerity and the highest level of austerities in Krishna consciousness, the next level, you can say, not highest, is to actually experience higher taste and leave the lower taste. Experiencing higher taste, higher taste in Krishna consciousness. Higher taste doesn't necessarily mean the sweetness of Krishna consciousness. That's another trap of devil, of Maya. Our target is not the sweetness of Krishna consciousness. Our target is the purity of Krishna consciousness. And there's a big difference in that. I can give a whole seminar on that because to ras, by ras we think sweetness, but that's not the point. Ras is not sweetness. Ras is, Prabhupada defines as mellows. There is sweetness in rasa, but rasa is not sweetness. Rasa means a relationship, mellows which we feel in relationship with somebody. That is rasa. That can be sweet, that can be sometimes bitter, that can be sometimes be sorrowful. If you are away from your lover, it's not just sweetness. So our aim, by rasa, experiencing higher taste means experiencing the purity of Krishna consciousness. In fact, devotees who are after sweetness of Krishna consciousness, you see, there are so many devotees who chant and they want to feel the bliss of chanting, and that's the aim, by the way. And when they don't feel bliss of chanting, they get depressed, they become sad, and when they do experience this bliss of chanting, they become very encouraged and they're serving Krishna. But that's the point. That's the point. That is that if we keep sweetness of Krishna consciousness as a goal of our activities of Krishna consciousness, that means we don't have faith in Krishna. It is the most sinful thing we can do in our Krishna consciousness. Why? Because there is a direct. This is a direct doubt in faith in Krishna. In other words, if we think, okay, my aim of Krishna consciousness is to experience bliss, then what happens is we don't have faith in Krishna, in other words. Why? Because when we don't have bliss, then we'll become depressed and we'll no longer serve Krishna nicely. And sometimes Krishna himself retracts bliss from our chanting. He will actually snatch away bliss and he will not give us bliss. He will lead us into dark night, into darkness and temptations, and see whether we still continue to serve him. But with full enthusiasm, if we still continue to serve him with full enthusiasm, that means we have faith in him. We are serving him for him. We are not serving him for some exchange of sweetness. That's what is Krishna consciousness, by the way. So higher taste in Krishna consciousness, experiencing higher taste is austerity in Krishna consciousness. Why? Because you might think experiencing higher taste is how is austerity, but no, it's austerity because higher taste doesn't mean sweetness. That's the whole point. Higher taste means purity. And to keep ourselves pure, that's austerity. Higher taste means experiencing our relationship with God. And in that relationship, there is happiness and sweetness, but there's sometimes sorrow, there's sometimes rejection, there's sometimes tests, and all those combined together, that produces a taste, special taste, a higher taste, which keeps the soul going on. And that is why experiencing higher taste is called an austerity in Krishna consciousness. That should be very, very importantly understood. But the highest level of austerity in Krishna consciousness, so the highest level of Krishna consciousness, austerity in Krishna consciousness, is to experiencing sorrow of separation in Krishna consciousness. You see, experiencing higher taste, the higher taste will develop into much higher levels and it will lead us to the highest level of taste in Krishna consciousness, that is experiencing sorrow and not bliss and happiness, by the way. To experiencing sorrow of separation, that is a higher taste. That is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. It looks contradictory. It doesn't look rational. And higher taste is the sorrow of separation. But that's the gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And by Chaitanya Charitamrita, we understand that in that sorrow, within that sorrow of separation, there is intense bliss. So separation is a combination of sorrow and bliss. Externally, there is sorrow. Internally, there is a bliss. But that bliss is nothing to be compared by the bliss of this material world, by the happiness of this material world. We even don't know what's that bliss feel like, the bliss of sorrow. We don't know that. We have no experience. We have no idea of that. But that's what Chaitanya Charitamrita explains. So, although there is some kind of reflection in this material world, there is sometimes happiness in sorrow, just like a mother becomes pregnant and it's so painful, pregnancy and then birth, and it's so problematic, but the mother feels happiness within because she's going to give a child. For males who are looking, females who are pregnant and undergoing so much suffering, for them it's, for them, come on, it's so much suffering, but it is suffering. And the birth, it's like complete suffering, but mother is feeling some kind of bliss in her heart because she's going to deliver a child. Now that's something, sorrow and bliss combined. That is a sorrow of separation. So that is called austerity in Krishna consciousness. You see how different it is from the understanding of Jnanis and Yogis. Now here, Hiranyarega, he left his house, and Prabhupada says he did some austerities. He retired according to the rites. The king then retired from family life to engage in austerities. The king retired from family life to engage in austerities. That's the point. That is called Vanprastha Sannyas. What kind of austerities this king was engaged in? It's not mentioned here, but what we can assume from Srimad Bhagavatam is these people are devotees. And what kind of austerities he was engaged in? He was engaged in Krishna consciousness austerities, as we told just now. These were not asuras or demons like Hiranyakashipu, who sat for millions of years without eating and he was reduced to bones. We know from Srimad Bhagavatam, and there was fire from his head and whole the word got trembling. He was not doing austerities like Dhruv Maharaj. Dhruv Maharaj was a neophyte, and we know to start with. And he did austerities which were really exactly not so pleasing to Krishna. He stopped eating and then he stopped breathing, but then Vishnu had to come and he said, well, stop all this, Dhruv, I am okay with you. Why Vishnu became pleased with Dhruva? Not because he was not eating and not breathing, because he was continuously chanting the holy names of Lord. That's why one of the definitions of austerities in Krishna consciousness is to always chant Krishna's name. Satatam Kirtayantomam. If you always chant the holy names, you will always remember Krishna and never forget him. That's what we defined austerity as. And this is a very beautiful process, Krishna consciousness, because it's easy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote an article in Gaudiya magazine, and he said that in initiation, when typically initiation is given in the other sampradayas, there are actually 5 things in initiation, which is called as, what's that's called as 5 things in initiation. So it's according to Pancharatri Vidhi, 5 items should be there in initiation, which I think is called as Panchashunu something, Yagya. So at the time of initiation, you get a name, and then you get Kanthimala, and then you receive, at the time of initiation, what else do you receive? You receive the mantra, which mantra to chant. And then 4th, at the time of initiation, you receive the Brahman thread. Technically in real initiation, in actually Vedic initiation, you get a thread, Janayu. And then the 5th, in initiation, you actually get tap. So in other tradition, Madhva and Ramanuja traditions, they have a iron stamp. On that stamp there is shankha, chakra, or maybe tilak, and they heat the stamp and they put it on a body, like red hot iron stamp, and there is a permanent mark on your body of either conch or chakra or something like something. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in one of his articles in Gaudiya that although this is a process, tapa is one of the process in yagyas, but Mahaprabhu is Namo Mahavadanyaya. He is the most merciful. So he couldn't see this pain to the body of Vaishnavas of actually stamping a red hot iron. It's painful for some time. He couldn't see, so he actually omitted this step from initiation, from these 5 steps, this applying stamp, and he requested his devotees to make tilak with chandan, and that's it. Omit the process of stamping. Because in his eyes, Mahaprabhu's eyes, his body belongs to Krishna, and it should not be tampered in any way. And the Vaishnavas should not be pained to the least. That's what Mahaprabhu did, Thakur says. So by his power, he omitted one step, which is one of the steps in Panchratrik Vidhi of initiation. So Gaudiya Vaishnavas do not stamp their body. So that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never professed giving pain to your body, destroying your body. In fact, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes a poem in Stavamala. He has written a book, Stavamala. The Samsara Dhava Nanada Loka, it's from that book. Sorry, Stavavli, not Stavamala. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes a book, Stavavli. I think in this I think Yasaprasada Bhagavad Prasada reports. The book is not given. So Samsara Dhava is from that book. And in that book, one of the poems Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, let me have millions of bodies with millions of eyes and millions of tongues so that I can chant the holy names of, I can chant millions of holy names of God. You see, it's completely contrary to ordinary understanding that this body is an obstacle. Of course, this body is an obstacle, but Vishwanath Thakur says, I want millions of bodies, because those millions of bodies will have millions of ears to hear about Krishna, millions of eyes to see Krishna, millions of tongues to chant about Krishna. Tunde Tandavani, that is one of the verses Chaitanya Charitamrita. So why is Vishwanath Thakur praying like that? Because Vishwanath Thakur understands and is convinced that this body is a property of Krishna. It's not my property. Sanatana Goswami wanted to destroy his property. Sanatana Goswami wanted to do suicide when he was coming from Vrindavan to Jagannath Puri to meet Mahaprabhu. And on the way in Jharkhand forest, he contracted a severe skin disease. And he thought this disease completely unbearable and nonsense. His whole body was having rashes and pus. And he thought, okay, fine, it's not bearable. But at the same time, when I'll go to meet Mahaprabhu, he will embrace me, on all this pus will actually be touching his transcendental body. So he decided, I'll go to Puri and I will do suicide. So I'll fall down on the wheel of Rath Yatra, and the Rath will go on my body and I'll just die. That's all. But Mahaprabhu knew, but Mahaprabhu could understand his mind, and Mahaprabhu told Sanatan, you should not think like that. I know what you're thinking, but your body is mine, and I have still to do many works and many wonders from your body. So that is sin if you want to destroy this body. It is not your property anymore. So that's the consciousness of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. This body is Krishna's. To engage this body completely in service of Krishna, that is austerities in Krishna consciousness. To engage his body, mind, and words, that is what Rupa Goswami writes, Karmana Manasa Girin Nikhila Apiyavastha Sujivan Mukta Sarchate. Anybody who engages their body, mind, and words completely in Krishna's service, that He's a liberated soul. That is the austerity of Krishna consciousness. That is what we have to practice. And that is what we have to focus upon. The idea is anything we do in devotion, in the path of love, it should be for God's sake. It should not be for our sake. If we are not eating, if we are not sleeping, it should be only for God's sake. And it should be in such a fashion for God, for Krishna, that everything we do should be for Krishna's sake and according to Krishna, for him and by him. That's the idea. For him, by him. It should be recommended by him. We should serve him as he wants, and we should not serve him as we want. And there's a lot of difference in that. So what he wants from us, Rasvarjam Rasopiyas, experience higher taste, always chant my names, always remember me, never forget me. That's what he wants. Austerity in Krishna consciousness is be humble. That is austerities of Krishna consciousness. He left his family to practice austerities. Be humble. Leaving your family is a sign of humbleness. That's one thing. We see in Bhagavatam many devotees leaving their family, Pandavas. I just told Pandavas, Rishabdev. Why they were leaving their families? They were Gyanis and Yogis? No. They were devotees. Leaving your family is an expression of humbleness. Everything is for God's sake. So why leaving family is expression of humbleness? Because we think that so I'm not worthy of so many luxuries and comforts and so many material enjoyments which Krishna has given. I'm servant, I'm not worth it, I'm useless, so I should leave it. So it's an expression of humbleness. In fact, in many scriptures, humbleness is defined as, humbleness is not just thinking. Lord Brahma says in Kamandika Niti Sutra, humbleness is not just in thoughts, humbleness is action. Humbleness is renunciation. The idea of humility is leaving the sense of worthedness in us. That is humbleness. I am worth it. Leaving the sense of any kind of value attached to our thoughts, ideas, words, and even our life. That is called humbleness. I am not worth it. All my ideas are valueless. My life is useless. My soul is helpless. And I'm not entitled to any sense enjoyment because I am good for nothing. If there's anybody who is entitled to enjoyment, it's Krishna. That is why Bhakti Santa Saraswati Thakur, he said, Tumara kanak bhoge rajanak. Whatever you have, it's for enjoyment of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says, whatever beautiful girls are there in this world, they are just for enjoyment of Krishna. Their beauty, just like beauty of gopis, is enjoyment for Krishna. So you see the point? That is humbleness. So leaving sense gratification is humbleness. Leaving family is an expression of humbleness. We don't want to leave sense gratification because we want to become pure and we want to become peaceful in our mind. No, everything should be for the sake of Krishna, to make him happy. Every action should be in service of Lord. We want to leave sense gratification because that is humbleness, and Krishna likes humbleness. Krishna likes that. We want to leave sense gratification because we think our master is entitled to all enjoyment. Bhoktaram yagyatapsam. I'm entitled to no enjoyment. I'm a slave. And that consciousness Krishna likes a lot. So that is humbleness. So austerities in Krishna consciousness is to be humble. These are all austerities in Krishna consciousness. Austerities in Krishna consciousness is to tolerate as Mahaprabhu says, through our conversation now, what to tolerate? To tolerate inconveniences in the association of devotees, to tolerate political atmosphere probably in temples or in communities of devotees, and to tolerate what can we say? To tolerate bodily and mental disturbances in service of Krishna. Finally, to tolerate the sort of separation in service of Krishna. That's austerities in Krishna consciousness. Austerities in Krishna consciousness is to give respect to all and not expect any respect in return. That's very difficult. Not to expect any kind of praise or favor in return, not to expect any kind of praise in lieu of a service in Krishna consciousness. That is austerity in Krishna consciousness. So you see the point. Krishna consciousness is full of austerities, but a definition of austerity is very different. A Jnani and Yogi will never understand what we are doing. They can never understand what we are doing. Externally, a Vaishnava might be eating normally, might be sleeping normally, talking normally, but what exactly he's doing in his heart, that matters. And ordinary people can never imagine what we are doing. But every moment in Krishna consciousness is an austerity, because every moment is choice. We should remember Krishna or we should forget Krishna. And it takes a lot of energy to remember Krishna every moment. And for that, we have to change our lifestyle. We have to change our whole outlook to the life. We have to change our food habits. Everything must change, and that requires a lot of energy, and that's why it's called as austerities. So that's what Hiranyareta is doing, by the way. He's doing that when he went to the forest, and he was and he was worshipping the mantra of fire god. Now, interestingly, in this verse in 17, Srila Prabhupada says there's no fault in worshipping demigods with this understanding. Demigods are servants of Supreme Lord. Madhva Sampradaya, they worship demigods in this capacity. And Madhva Acharya, he said, we in fact should worship demigods because they're great servants of Lord. But in Krishna consciousness, we don't do that because in this age, it gives a very wrong impression in the public. Public cannot understand that demigods are servant of Lord, because in the public, it's a deep ingrained notion, hard-held notion that demigods are independent gods, Lord Shiva, Lord Durga, Lord Ganesh, because of blessings of Shankaracharya, and he is there, and Mayavad. This kind of notion is very difficult to get rid of in Indian understanding, in Sanatana Dharma. It is completely contaminated. So that's why Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they don't worship any demigods, to give an impression that demigods are not gods, independent gods. Krishna is God. But Srila Prabhupada said, if anyone does worship demigods with the understanding that they're servants of Krishna, there's no harm. That's why if you go to Madhva Sampradaya, if you see a Madhvite worshipping any Madhvite, you will see Krishna and there will be many demigods, and their whole worship takes 1.5 to 2 hours, and they're worshipping Ganesh, Shiva. And then you might say, this is not pure devotion, but you're wrong. At least Madhvacharya gave this system. Why Madhvacharya gave this system of worshipping demigods along with Krishna? Because at that time in Karnataka, there was a complete mess. There was a strong hold of Brahmanas and Karmkandis within that region. And he wanted to fight Karmkandis. And then there was a Mayavad. So in order to fight Karmkandis was said, and in fact Mayavad brought this concept that there are 5 gods: Ganesh, Vishnu, Surya, Durga, and Ganesh, Vishnu, Surya, Durga, and Shiva. So he said all are independent gods. And Karmkandis also said, so Karmkandis added to the list. Indra, Varun, Agni, they're also independent gods. And it became a complete mess. Karmkandis were contaminated by Mayavad. It was a complete mess in Karnataka. It was a hodgepodge of Karmkand and Mayavad, and so many gods were there. And at that time in Karnataka, there were so many local gods also. Snakes and bhutas and so many village gods. So it was complete mess. So Madhvacharya thought, okay, the best thing to preach is to let them know who is God and to let them know these are demigods. And then they will understand the whole system, and then they can actually be slowly guided towards Krishna. Rather than saying these are not gods and these are demigods, there would have been a revolt at that time, and they would not even accept Krishna as supreme. Madhvacharya took that route. But when Chaitanya Prabhu came and he preached and Gaudiya Vaishnavism came, it was a complete mess all over the world. And there was no Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda finished. Mayavad also went down. What was there? There was simply Bhogavad. People simply doing sense gratification in our society. So now we can say, okay, Krishna is God. You don't need to worship demigods. Because people will accept. People accept, okay, fine, anyway, we are worshiping demigods, we do rituals, we are not even interested to worship demigods or gods. We are like hidden atheists. There's some superpower and like that. So now, Gaudiya Mahaprabhu's thought, okay, now it's the time to declare Krishna as God. Don't worship demigods. Because what Madhva did, it didn't actually go into society. Madhva brought the system of worshiping demigods with Krishna on the top, demigods on the down. But what happened was his philosophy didn't go through. Madhvacharya's philosophy largely been constrained in Karnataka area. That's all, and it's going down. So people couldn't really get to understand the system, his system, because his system is Vedic system where Krishna is there and demigods are there, and you worship Krishna with demigods. That's a Vedic system, and that's very difficult. So Mahaprabhu came, he said, no, this doesn't work in society. People are really dumb. So we have to remove demigods. Because what people will do, people will worship demigods and Krishna, and demigods are servants of Krishna, and they will asking desires from demigods, and they will recognize Krishna as supreme. So again, they are benefit of their devotion. Mahaprabhu said to forget with it. Forget with this whole system. Let's go to Pancharath system. Pancharath system says, only focus on Krishna. Don't worry about demigods. Leave them. So we took Pancharath system and along with Bhagavad Gita. And Mahaprabhu said, this is good. People will get more benefit rather than that system. So Prabhupada says, although demigod worship is not wrong, if we do with proper understanding the servants, but we don't buy that philosophy because people will not be benefited by that in the present age. In the present age, we deny demigod worship and we simply take to Krishna's worship. That's easy, that's focused. You don't have to go in so many details. These are demigods, and you don't have to even go in so many details of, then you have to learn the process of worshipping demigods separately from process of worshipping Krishna. So it becomes very complicated. So Mahaprabhu said, forget it. Just chant Shravanam and Kirtanam and take Pancharatra Vidhi as favorable to Bhagavad Gita, and that's it. And focus on Krishna and go back to God. So we should not condemn demigods because they're servants of Krishna. We have to keep in our mind. Although in public we might say that don't worship demigods. Demigods are actually, they fulfill desires. Sometimes they fall down. Bhagavad says Krishna is supreme. That is all to glorify Krishna, not to condemn demigods. Glorify his position. We just say in public, don't worship demigods. Although they are servants of Krishna, but they are on the post of demigods, and people become confused. People are full of so many desires that they will be stuck to demigods. Because as soon as you introduce demigod worship, you introduce other Puranas also. You introduce other Puranas like which are except Srimad Bhagavatam, because then you want to read about demigods. Who are these? Varun, Agni, and then you're reading Puranas and they become confused because other Puranas are full of some wrong philosophies, full of desires, and becomes a mess. So Mahaprabhu said to his spiritual master, I'm a fool. My spiritual master said, why do you want to read Vedanta Sutra? Mahaprabhu said, my spiritual master said, I'm a fool. And he asked me to chant Hare Krishna and serve Vaishnavas and serve Krishna and try to do austerities in Krishna consciousness. I'm a fool. Mahaprabhu was not a fool, but he said, well, It's very difficult to understand these complexities of Vedas, Vedic system of worship. So leave it. Come to Bhagavad Gita, Shravanam and Kirtanam and Panchratra Vidhi, just to support of deity worship and perfect your life and go back. That's all. So like that. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki. Anybody wants to ask anything, I'll stop here. It's too much talking.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for that wonderful class. So you very well explained about the bodily conception, which we have to, which is very important for Krishna, which we should not torture the body to attain the love of God. So that is what Vaishnava philosophy is also saying. So you very well told about the own desire, it is because of our own desire we have this material body, but it is a sin, you told. So otherwise we must have had a spiritual body and staying with Lord Shri Krishna in Golaka. So, and you told about the importance of the renunciation. So the sannyasi, like how we have to, in family situation, it's not possible. So we have to go to some dham and we have to take up the process of renunciation. So that we can focus on the Lord. So the yogis and jnanis, you told the difference about the fasting between the yogis and jnanis and the Vaishnavas, and the 5 things about the initiation, and the Madhvacharya who supported the demigod worship because of the Karmakandis who were present at that time, and then how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and revealed only Krishna as the Lord, so which is told in the Pancharatrika system. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for that wonderful class. So devotees, any questions or realizations, please go ahead. Yes, Jodi Mataji, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. I have a question. You stated that the humbleness is thinking that I'm not worthy. So, if a person is trying to serve by his ability, or he's trying to identify his own ideas or capacity to please the devotees during the service, then he has to find out his capacities, his abilities or ideas, or then somehow he will be thinking of his worthiness, how he should be served.
Okay, yeah, no. Actually, yeah, you're right. While to serve, we have to judge our capacities and our limits and everything and skills. But we know that all these capacity and skills come from Krishna. It is not ours, and it was never ours. And as soon as we think it is ours, we lose them. So we think it's given by Krishna for Krishna. That's the idea. It's given by him to serve him. And that is why we are always worthless. We are always valueless. Whatever good we find in ourselves, that is given by Krishna. Whatever bad we find in ourselves, that we have earned ourselves. That is Vaishnava perspective. So in other words, we are so useless that we are expert in becoming useless. And we become more useless and useless by becoming more bad and evil that we earn ourselves. But Krishna is so nice that he gives us good qualities and gifts and skills so that we can serve him. But if we don't use them, then he snatches them. And in the next life, we become devoid of them. We become animals or some humans without any skills and dumb. So even for devotees and even for non-devotees, anybody, whatever skills you find, that is given by Krishna. That's why Krishna says in Gita 10th chapter, of all cheaters, I am the cheating. Of the intelligent, I am the intelligence. Of the powerful, I am the power. So you see, he's talking about skills. So it's not just devotees, it's even non-devotees. Everything is given by good. Everything good is given by Krishna. So we know that. That's why we know we are almost useless. We are worthless. What we are good at is destroying these good qualities and skill. So you'll see how much foolish and useless we are. That's what we are.
But during the process, we cannot separate. This is very gross level. I mean, it is very higher understanding what you are saying. When we serve at that time, we are thinking of pleasing other person or the devotees. So at that time, it's very difficult to think what you are saying.
Yeah, but we have to practice. That's all. There is no other way around. We can't go around this by any other method. We have to practice. You're right, we forget. You have to practice again and again and again. You have to hear this again and again and again and again. And if we are unable to remember this point and forget it, pray to Krishna. Krishna will do something and he will make you understand in his own way. He's expert. He'll do something in your life so that you will never forget this point. Nothing belongs to me. No good qualities. So if we have to remember to pray to Krishna. Krishna, please help me. It's difficult. He's a master planner. He will make us understand and make us realize, so that 24 hours we can always remember this. Like that. There's no other way around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jyoti Mataji. Sundaramacharji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for that class. It was a little heavy for me. Prabhuji, I have one question. There are, the principles that you explained in the class are very, very high up there. But I've been practicing for some time now, and just an observation that I had that we present big we hear so many high level principles in the class, but we are down here. But
no, you are speaking completely reverse. You know what? Whatever I told, that is basics of Krishna consciousness. That's high also. I told high things also. You're correct. Separation and sorrow and all those things. But these are the foundational principles of Krishna consciousness. Of course, you're right. It takes time to grasp this. But what else is there to grasp in Krishna consciousness? What else should we discuss and understand? Some stories or some cookie making or something. There's nothing else to talk about. This is basics of Krishna consciousness, by the way. To always remember Krishna, never to forget him. To always to try to experience higher taste. Austerities means humbleness. Humbleness means leaving sense gratification. To tolerate conveniences in association of devotees, that is austerities. To give respect to others, but never expect any praise. These are difficult things. I agree to you. These are very difficult things. Now, if we don't talk about these things, then what else is to talk? Now we can talk about chant Hare Krishna and read Bhagavad Gita daily, one verse, offer something to Krishna and eat. That is beginning of Krishna consciousness, but that's not the basics of Krishna consciousness. That is beginning activities in Krishna consciousness, but that's not the basic principles of Krishna. That's the process. But I'm talking about the principles. And process without the principles doesn't work, by the way. Doesn't work. So Krishna consciousness is to do with consciousness. Consciousness is to do with understanding. Without understanding, any action is a failure. So we talk about actions in Krishna consciousness. It doesn't work because it fails. So you see the point. It might be difficult, and I got the point. Because principles of Krishna consciousness are difficult, because we are talking about reversing your mentality from enjoyment to service. But if we hear again and again and again and again, it becomes easy. And then whatever we do, it gives result. Otherwise, we will keep on practicing Krishna consciousness, but there will be no result or very minor result. And then we will become depressed, frustrated, nothing is happening. Already, Maya is preparing to attack us. And here, we don't spend our time understanding principles because it's difficult. Then it becomes a very dangerous situation. So we have to hear it again and again. Srila Prabhupada talks over again and again in his books, all these things what I have told in each of his purport. But you have to look from that perspective. Otherwise, we will feel Prabhupada is saying, Prabhupada is talking only about process. We will not focus on the principle what Prabhupada is giving also in his purport. And when we over and over hear, we advance, we apply principle in the process, we get some result, we advance, but Maya is standing there to make us fall down. So we have to fasten our speed somehow, otherwise very dangerous situation. She will somehow get us out or off this devotional life. She can do that also by not making you leave Krishna consciousness, but making you dull in Krishna consciousness, or by destroying your enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness after some time. So you might be practicing Krishna consciousness, you might be thinking, okay, it's easy, I'm practicing, but we might not be advancing even an inch. That also Maya can do. So yeah, we have to hear over and over again. This is basics, and we have to hear it until unless we understand it. But this is what will help us to get the results out of the process. Otherwise, Bahu Janma Jadi Kare Shravan Kirtan, we can practice for millions of lifetimes the process of Krishna consciousness, but never get any result. That also Mahaprabhu said. So
yes, whatever you're saying is perfectly right, Prabhu. I had a question regarding, that principles are stated and devotees at different level, they take it up and, without understanding their own capacities. Like, like four-regularity principle. Like, it's like, there are so many contradictions and all. Not contradictions, I will say, but variations but many people are at different levels,
no.
And
no, but okay,
people,
fine. Okay, fine. Can you explain four regulatory principles? What do you mean by different levels?
I will come straight over to, illicit relationship. So devotees are like, yes, there is no sense gratification. It's only for procreation. And then, many people, even we tried it. When we got married, it was like, yes, this is how Prabhupada said it. And we fell down. And it was so bad, and then we revised. We looked at our capacity. Not because, that other devotee can practice it, I could practice it. So the point was, so the thing was that, my observation, and because I've been hearing certain things, that devotees struggle, they take it up, it's like, spiritual bypassing. They think they're up there. I also thought I'm up there, and I felt really on my face, and I understood my level. But some people don't recognize their level, and they're continuing, and they fall off of their married relationship. So, and even small things like, no eating outside food, that is perfectly fine. Yes, that is the principle. And then what happens, that people get sick because there's no food at home. And it happened to me once that, I strictly don't get bread, and there was some certain busy period, and I didn't have prasadam at home. It was so bad.
But then what's the but then you mean to say the solution is
like, that people have, if there is a disclaimer or something, that people have to learn to practice it from their level. See, like, if a devotee is buying a house, 4-bedroom house, I cannot afford it. We have to take an inventory of what is our level, what is our capacity, what are our conditionings and all.
But Mataji, one thing is, you see in your argument there's a big flaw, because to say you're correct, we have to act according to a level. That statement is correct. But you see, if we bring that point in philosophy, then a whole process will get diluted. Because we say, okay, don't eat outside food, but then okay, so there is a asterisk on the statement, and there's a footnote. Well, in some circumstances you can eat. Now what will happen is, people will not see don't eat outside food, and they will make all kind of excuses to eat outside food. So everything will become very diluted, extremely diluted. So that's why all of acharyas, they didn't say this in any of the book. Prabhupada always hammered this, don't eat outside. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, somebody asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what about outside eating food? Mahaprabhu said, Hobe dushtaman, your mind will be contaminated. And so Mahaprabhu didn't add a footnote there. Conditions apply. No practical situations. No. Because as soon as you bring practicality, people will gravitate towards that practical things and they will destroy all regulatory principles. Illicit sex, people will destroy everything. People will say, okay, some practical situations. No, okay, fine. So then fine means always. So you see, a mind works like that. That is why in no Dharma Shastra, in Dharma Shastra even, not in Bhakti Shastra, in Manu Samhita and everywhere, there's strict principles which should be followed. If you don't follow this, punishment. Nevertheless, we know that these principles we will not be able to follow 100%. That's true. But we have to try to follow. And if we are unable to follow, we also have to understand we are fallen and we are unable to do this. And in that situation, we have to take counseling from senior. And that they're the role of saints. So you see outside food example. So one boy also came yesterday, and he read you should not eat outside food, and then he was not eating. He became sick, and then he said, so my capacity is not like that. So I started eating some little bit. But then I told him, well, you should ask devotees. We have a solution. We have a solution. That's the role of Vaishnavas. Otherwise, what will happen is, if we start looking at our capacities and then we try to work on level, we will dilute everything. We will come to such a low level, we will fall into material enjoyment and we will leave everything. That's going to happen. So that I told that boy, okay, if you ask me, I've seen many devotees and we have counseled that you already make something and keep it in your house, in your fridge, or in some vessels, some already prepared food, dry items, and eat whenever you like. And when you're traveling, then you can eat fruits, you can eat peanuts. I gave him many options. You can keep electric cooker, and that's very practical. I gave him practical tips, and he's happy. He's doing that. And he's a businessman. He's traveling to China, and here he said, Prabhu, how it's possible? Now he's doing that. So I think it's better. We can look at our capacities, but this is what scripture says, and we have to follow it. We're not able to follow it. We are fallen. That we have to understand. We are weak. Yes, we are weak. But then how to do it? Vaishnavas. And that is why it is said Sadhu, Guru, and Shastra. If we only have scriptures, we will never be able to follow it nicely. So these are practical questions you're asking, and there are practical answers with devotees. We need some counselor, some guidance, and we face all these kind of questions, not first time. All the time these kind of questions are there. And only these kind of questions are there. And then we give them practical solutions. People follow. Sometimes solutions work, sometimes don't. Then we give another solution. And they elevate. They elevate. There are many devotees who are not eating outside, in spite of being businessman. I just told you, traveling, you're in your house, but those people are doing. There are many devotees who are sense controlled in their married life. I know many devotees, and they are very happy in their married life. So both husband and wife understand things. So you see, levels thing. You see this levels thing. We should understand the capacity in levels, and then adjust. Adjustment cannot be done by our own mental speculation. That's the point. We can adjust things, and we have to adjust according to our levels. That is, you're correct. But how to adjust without breaking the philosophy and the principles, that an expert guide will tell. And that is why there's a need of guru, spiritual master. Otherwise, you see, people can say, okay, I'll read books of Prabhupada, and there's no need of spiritual master. Why do we need spiritual master? Everything is clear. And we can adjust according to a level. No, you can't do. Spiritual master will guide in these practical things. And then there is saints and sadhus. We ask them these problems, and then they tell. And these are not mentioned in the books. We cannot mention them in the books. We can't give all possible practical levels in the books. Okay, don't eat outside. So there's a footnotes, and then we say, okay, but you can eat outside when you're in business. You can eat outside when you don't have anything to eat in food. And there's a whole list. That list is inexhaustible. And if we make that list, what will happen is people will find some point in that list to eat outside. See, in Kali Yuga, we are very corrupt. We are hypocrites. We are looking for sense enjoyment. So we will We will definitely find a point. Okay, this is a point which is mentioned in scriptures where I can eat outside, so let me eat. So we will we don't want to follow regulative principles, and that's why if any kind of practical adjustment is mentioned in scriptures, we will exploit it to enjoy. That's going to happen, and then we will develop another point. We get another point, and we'll make our own philosophy. We'll be completely deviated and fall down. And that's, by the way, sometimes happens in that's happening, by the way, with our devotees. Many devotees, I travel around the world, many devotees are eating outside because they say it's not practical, not eating outside food. Well, did you ask any good devotee? Did you ask your spiritual master what to do in these kind of things? Or did you ask some devotee who himself is diluted, who himself is following this kind of philosophy? No, it's not practical. Then if this is a philosophy, then nothing is practical in Srila Prabhupada books. Nothing will appear practical, and everything will change. And that's happening, by the way. That's really happening. There are wrong advices, wrong. See, I understand your point. It should be practical. But what practical solutions we have to apply, that don't have to invent by our mind. That's what devotees are doing. They're not wrong in saying this is impossible for me. Yeah, these are very difficult things. But that's not impossible, that is difficult. But then how to do those difficult things, how to actually go around that, there we need expert guidance. That's why Guru, expert guidance is required. Daksha, Guru is Daksha. Without Guru, nobody can cross this material world because we'll not be able to make it. So it's like, so it's almost like you want to learn a harmonium. So if you want to learn a piano and you want to learn playing piano by both hands, it's impossible you can't do yourself. Then you might say, oh, yes, I can't do, forget it. No. You go to an expert teacher and you ask him how to do. He will tell you the technique. When you follow the technique, he will observe you. When you follow the technique, you will be able to play piano by both hands separately. So those techniques, practical techniques are there with devotees. Otherwise, what those devotees are doing? Why there are so many guides around in the world? Prabhupada books are okay. But no, that's not okay. That's the point there. It's difficult, but the solution we don't have to make from our mind. Solution we have to get from scriptures. Scriptures, or if scriptures don't mention, then sadhus. Because scriptures will not mention everything. Because scriptures have a fear that people of this age will exploit their commands and fulfill their sense gratifications. So they don't speak everything. They leave it to sadhus and gurus who explain it case by case, give them practical solutions like that.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you very much for the answer and the clarification. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, what an excellent explanation, Prabhuji. It was so wonderful. So there you told we have to take the association of the devotees along with the spiritual master so that we get the solution for all the problems we are facing practically. And then you told how Maya Devi pulls us down when we are also in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes it says, okay, chalo, you are in Krishna consciousness, but sometimes you can relax, it says. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for that explanation. So any other devotees, any questions or comments or realizations? Hare Krishna. Okay, so if no more questions, we shall end our call here. Shama Gauri Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class and very nice explanation, and very, very important to know about the austerities in Krishna consciousness. It's, very basic, but it's very, very important for all of us. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So let's pay our obeisances to Prabhuji. Vancha kalpa
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Jai.
Radhe.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.